Have you ever walked into a place and, before even saying a word, felt like you didn't belong there, but at the same time knew you needed to stay? That's exactly what happens to Sharkston the first time he crosses the so-called shark door. As soon as he pushes open that heavy, silent door, he realizes something few novice investors see. That environment wasn't created for those still groping in the world of personal finance, much less for those looking for shortcuts. It's a space reserved for those who understand wealth building, for those who see the money game with a long-term mindset, and for those who aren't afraid to face hard truths about investing, discipline, and real wealth accumulation. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. What strikes you most isn't the luxury, nor the gigantic numbers on the screens. It's the silence, a comfortable, almost strategic silence. There's no small talk, no, "I heard that such and such stock is going to explode" rhetoric. No people trying to look rich while pushing empty investment theories. None of that. There, you only find people who are. People who understand that wealth building isn't about ostentation, but about structure. That investing isn't a lottery, it's a method. And when Sharkston looks around, he notices something that gives him a slight shock. Nobody in that room is trying to impress anyone. Have you ever experienced this? That moment when you enter a room and realize that everyone there is thinking on a completely different level. That's exactly the feeling that takes over him. Because while amateur investors talk about how much they want to earn, the sharks think about how to multiply the very system that generates the profit. They don't talk about buying a new car. They talk about maintaining focus, discipline, and liquidity. They don't talk about dreams. They talk about real wealth. They don't talk about willpower. They talk about strategy. And it is at this moment that something fundamental happens. Sharkston understands that this is not just a meeting of heavyweight investors. It's a silent ritual for those who have learned to control their own ego before trying to control their own money. This place is not for amateurs. And realizing this, he feels as if he has crossed an invisible door, the true shark door. The door that separates those who seek shortcuts from those who seek consistency, those who chase opportunity from those who create opportunity, those who chase money from those who make money come to them. What were these guys doing so differently that almost nobody notices? This question echoes in his head as he observes every detail, every gesture, every economical and precise statement. The tension is slight, but the focus is absolute. It's as if everyone there sees investment not as a chance, but as a mechanism, not as an event, but as a process. And it is precisely when this perception begins to take hold in Sharkston's mind that something even deeper is revealed, as if the environment itself were teaching him something that cannot be explained in words, only felt. Now I want to delve even deeper into this moment, when he understands, for the first time, what it truly means to enter a place where mindset changes everything. And perhaps that's exactly why this first meeting affects him so much. Because when you realize there's a level above, a silent, strategic level, almost invisible to those still, stuck on the surface, something inside you awakens. It's that feeling that the game has always been happening in front of you, but only now have you begun to see the real rules. And as Sharkston observes every move, every exchange of glances, every decision made without haste and without ego, he feels he's learning more in minutes than he learned in months, consuming scattered content about investments and personal finance. And, while I'm telling you this, maybe you're remembering a similar situation, a moment when you realized there was much more happening behind the scenes than you imagined. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far, because your experiences and insights help not only to deepen this conversation, but also to build a community of people who truly want to evolve. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who need to hear this kind of message. And every comment you leave helps this content go further than you imagine. And since we're building this path together, if up to this point you felt that this story has opened up some mental clarity for you, or even given you that reality check that every investor needs, remember to like the video. This shows YouTube that this topic is worthwhile, and that more people should have access to this reflection on mindset, discipline, and building real wealth. And if you want to continue following Sharkston's journey, understanding each step inside the shark door, and discovering things that nobody usually explains, subscribe to the channel. That way you'll always receive the next chapter of this silent but powerful evolution. Because ultimately, that's what connects everything. You, me, and Sharkston are walking through those doors together. And as he continues to observe that room and understand, piece by piece, what truly distinguishes a small fish from a real shark, something even greater begins to form within him. A kind of perception that goes far beyond numbers or techniques. A perception that only appears when you are exactly where you previously thought you didn't belong. And it is at that moment that something profound begins to reveal itself. It's curious how certain environments seem to carry a hidden truth that no one needs to say aloud. That's exactly what Sharkston senses when he starts paying attention not only to what those investors say, but to what they avoid saying. There's a different kind of silence there. A silence that doesn't stem from shame or insecurity, but from absolute focus. While many beginners in personal finance want to prove something, justify choices, boast, or list achievements, those men and women at the table act as if none of that simply matters. None of them mention their salary, the car they drive, or the expensive trip they took. No, look how much I earned. No, my net worth reached such and such figures. No ego competition. No theatrics. What? Exists? There is a type of conversation that, for those who have never been in that kind of room, seems almost forbidden. They talk about equity as if it were something intimate. They discuss valuation as if it were a secret code. They analyze liquidity with an unsettling calm, like those accustomed to making decisions with real impact. They comment on cycle time and risk exposure without any air of mystery, almost as if they were talking about the weather, but with the ease of those who deeply understand every detail. It's a direct, clean language, without exaggeration, and at the same time, full of power. As Sharkston absorbs all of this, he begins to realize that this silence isn't empty. It's full of intentions, behind-the-scenes insights, reasoning, and strategies that don't need to be memorized because they're already part of their mindset. It's at this moment that a powerful insight strikes him. While most people spend their entire lives searching for the next gain, the next shortcut, the next stroke of luck, these investors talk about systems that generate continuous profits. They aren't interested in the next big opportunity. They're interested in operating mechanisms that work even when no one is watching. It's a kind of revelation that changes everything because it shows that building wealth isn't about showing off. It's about structuring. And perhaps that's why Sharkston feels like he's breaking into a closed club. Not because access is forbidden, but because very few people truly care about developing the discipline and internal transformation necessary to get there. Most want results, few want process. Most want return, few want responsibility. It's this contrast that begins to open his eyes, showing him that there's a huge difference between knowing about investing and acting like someone who actually invests. And the more he observes, the more he realizes that this strategic silence is, in fact, the sound of a mature mindset operating without the need for external approval. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it's precisely from this moment that Sharkston understands that the game doesn't begin when you put money into something. It begins when you change the type of conversation that inhabits your head. It's this subtle yet powerful change that opens doors that don't appear in apps or short videos. And while this understanding begins to take hold within him, something even bigger is about to happen, as if that room. We're about to reveal a hidden layer of the shark universe, a layer that most will never perceive. Comment below. That makes sense to me. It is at this moment that something begins to silently change within Sharkston, as if a heavy penny were dropping. He realizes that everything he had always heard about starting small, saving what you can, investing when you have money left over, is part of a completely different game than the one those people play. For most, investing $50 a month is progress, an achievement, almost a heroic effort. There, in that room, it would be just a detail, a speck of dust. Not because they despise humble beginnings, but because they operate in a different dimension of mentality, a dimension where multiplying the source of money comes before multiplying the money itself. And that difference changes everything. While many people see investing as a final destination, those investors treat it as a starting point. They don't think about the next investment. They think about how to increase their own monthly income. They don't think about finding opportunities. They think about creating opportunities. They don't wait for a chance to appear. They create chances, redesign paths, connect with people who broaden their vision, and unlock exclusive opportunities that simply don't appear to those who live in survival mode. It's a hidden truth that almost no one shows on YouTube because it requires more than techniques. It requires transformation. Sharkston realizes that, in that environment, the conversation about money isn't about how much each person earns, but about how each person generates it. It's not about superficial diversification, but about systems architecture. They talk about networking, like they talk about fuel, about allocation like they talk about anatomy, about growth like they talk about biology. Something alive, constantly expanding, that doesn't depend on luck, but on conscious decisions and discipline. That never appears behind the scenes. It's in this contrast that he understands why so many people stop so early, because they build small strategies on small sources. They don't realize that before trying to multiply a number, they need to multiply the very flow that feeds that number. This realization has an almost physical impact. It's as if a mental door suddenly opens, revealing that the real shark game begins exactly where most believe it ends. They aren't seeking the perfect investment. They're developing the ability to become people who create investments. And that difference is gigantic. While some wait for signs of opportunity, they build structures that generate opportunities. It's a silent journey, full of difficult choices, heavy discipline, and decisions that demand long-term vision, but which, at the same time, reveal a type of freedom that most never experience. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because it's precisely when Sharkston understands this shift in focus, from investor to builder, that his horizons begin to expand. He realizes he was looking at the game through the wrong lens, and that there's an even deeper layer to this mentality. A layer that explains why some people thrive even in bad times, while others stagnate even when everything seems favorable. And as he absorbs this revelation, something even more intense is about to manifest within him, as if a new gear is starting to turn. Write this down. I'm on this journey too. It is precisely when this new understanding begins to take hold that something even deeper happens within Sharkston, as if he were seeing for the first time the true driving force behind that type of person. He realizes that, in that group, nobody is looking for the perfect investment, the miraculous action, the shortcut that promises a quick return. That mentality simply doesn't exist there. What exists is a completely different pursuit. They want volume, they want impact, they want consistency. They seek the disciplined repetition of their own decisions, like someone sharpening a blade every day until it cuts effortlessly. It's a logic that reorganizes everything, because it shows that the shark's focus is not on opportunity, but on the ability to sustain opportunities for a long time. It's an owner's mentality, not a hunter. Sharkston is beginning to realize that this is the mental shift that separates those who truly build wealth from those who only dream of it. There is no secret password, hidden VIP room, or magical access that someone can give you. There is internal transformation. There is the abandonment of old habits, of the anxiety for immediate results, of that childish urgency to see returns before learning to walk. It's a process of maturity, and, more than that, it's a reconstruction of the way of thinking. The sharks speak little, but each of their gestures carries this silent message. It's not about the investment, it's about who you become when you start thinking like someone who creates paths. He also realizes that emotional resilience is an essential part of this world. It's not just about knowing where to put the money, but knowing where to put one's own energy. It's about resisting the urge to give up, about understanding that setbacks are part of the journey, about maintaining a long-term vision even when things shake in the short term. While many people abandon their plans out of fear, boredom, or distraction, these investors continue to move forward as if they have already understood that, in the end, disciplining one's own mind is more important than disciplining one's own portfolio. And when Sharkston connects all these dots, a simple but powerful phrase emerges within him. If I understand this now, anyone with discipline can enter as well. For the first time, he feels that this world is not exclusive due to a lack of opportunity, but due to a lack of inner preparation. The shark door doesn't open with money. It opens with maturity, with attention, with responsibility, with the courage to face one's own mindset and reshape it without excuses. This feeling brings a certain relief, but also a huge sense of responsibility, because it shows that the path is possible, but it demands something from each person that cannot be outsourced. Transformation. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it's precisely at this point that Sharkston begins to realize that there's an even more hidden layer to this journey. A layer that reveals how these investors manage to stay in the game for decades while so many give up before even starting. It's as if a new door is opening within him, inviting him to see the next level of this owner mentality, a phase where strategy and identity finally meet. Comment below. That makes sense to me. When Sharkston leaves that room, something inside him is different. Not fleeting excitement, nor that impulsive motivation that disappears after a few hours. It's something deeper, almost like a new identity beginning to form. He realizes that, after seeing what he saw, there's no turning back. The feeling is like crossing an invisible border. Once you discover the hidden truth behind shark behavior, you can no longer settle into beginner mode. The mindset changes before you even realize. The perspective changes. The decisions change. The old patterns begin to seem too small for the size of the vision that is beginning to emerge. As he walks down the hallway, he feels he no longer wants to just watch the game from the sidelines, like someone observing an aquarium and imagining what it would be like to swim inside. No, now he wants to play. He wants to participate in the process, even knowing that this means giving up comforts, facing his own limitations, and taking responsibility for his own choices. He understands that being a small fish is comfortable, but it's an expensive comfort, a comfort that charges invisible interest, that binds, that limits, that prevents growth. And after this meeting, Sharkston can no longer accept this role. The promise he makes to himself arises spontaneously, almost like a reflex, to increase discipline, to increase the volume of action, to broaden his vision. It's not about doing more out of anxiety, but doing better out of awareness. Every conversation he overheard in that room, every silence charged with intention, every strategic decision made without haste, all of this echoes within him like a completely new mental map. He realizes that he spent years searching for techniques when he actually needed to seek maturity. He looked for shortcuts when he needed structure. He sought security when he needed courage. And the most revealing part of this journey is realizing that change doesn't begin when the money arrives. It begins earlier, in the mind, in behavior, in the unseen behind-the-scenes work. Sharkston understands that entering the game means abandoning old patterns, reshaping priorities, and building an identity capable of sustaining great results. It's almost as if he received a symbolic key, not because someone handed it to him, but because he became capable of receiving it. That's what separates the curious from the committed, and he knows exactly which side he wants to be on. The vision from the other side, the side where the sharks swim, is all too clear now. He saw the calm, the strategy, the internal security that comes from discipline and long-term thinking. He saw how these investors build opportunities, how they organize their thoughts, how they think in decades. It's no longer possible to unsee. It's impossible to pretend not to understand. It's impossible to go back to autopilot. This meeting wasn't just an encounter. It was a watershed moment, a silent turning point that will guide all decisions from now on. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because it's precisely at the moment Sharkston makes this inner commitment that the journey changes direction. He walks out that door not as someone who learned something new, but as someone who decided to live in a new way. And this difference will open paths he never would have imagined before. Paths that demand more, but also deliver more, especially for those willing to sustain their own transformation. Write this down. I want to play. And if you've made it this far with me, you can tell this topic resonated with you in some way. This type of conversation isn't common, it isn't superficial, and it isn't always comfortable, but that's precisely what makes the difference in our journey. So, if this content added value to you, if it shed some light on your thinking, or made you rethink decisions, consider subscribing to the channel. That way you can continue following this journey in depth, step by step, exactly as we did today. And also leave a comment saying, I'm with you until the end, just so I know you persevered until the very last minute, and that this message truly found its place within you. This kind of feedback helps keep this exchange alive and provides direction for the next chapters of this series. If you want to leave a like, do it naturally, in your own time. It's a simple way to show that this conversation touched you, and that this type of content deserves to continue existing. And before you leave, there's a video here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this journey. Click and continue with Me There.